The mere exposure effect, or the familiarity principle, is the idea that we have preference towards things merely because we've been exposed to them more often. This principle was first identified by psychologist Robert Zayonk in the 1960s. He discovered that people tend to favor things that they've seen more often, even if they don't remember consciously seeing them. Let's look at a practical example. Say you need to buy some pens from a store. When you get there, there are multiple different brands set out and available to choose from. Maybe you've got a Papermate, or a Bic, or a Uniball. The point is, whatever you're most familiar with, you're likely going to gravitate towards. Maybe you've seen an ad for a pen, and you might not have used it before, but this ad automatically makes it more familiar to you. So while this may not always be the case, you're technically more likely to choose the pen you've seen the ad for, or the one you're most familiar with. This principle isn't just limited to objects like pens. It can be applied to people, music, ideas, and even more. Think about songs you've heard on the radio. Maybe a song you don't know that's playing on the radio, and you're not sure how you feel about it at first, but it's popular. It keeps playing over and over again, and eventually, it grows on you. You learn to like it. That's the mere exposure effect. The same thing applies in social situations, with friends, close friends, colleagues, and general acquaintances. Even if you don't interact with someone very much, if you're used to seeing them all the time, you're more likely to feel comfortable and favorably disposed towards those people you see. When it comes to close friends or romantic partners, this has an even greater effect. When you hang out with those people, it can feel habitual, like a routine, comforting even. Now, this gives some background and an explanation for why a lot of people consider change to be very difficult. Based on what we know about the familiarity principle, it would make sense to assume that the things we're less familiar with, we would have a tendency to dislike. Change is already difficult as it is, but especially when it's change or a transition into something that we are totally unfamiliar with, there's an added layer of uncomfortability to that process. Here's a few tips to use this effect or principle to your advantage. Surround yourself with positive influences. The more positivity you can engage yourself with, the more positive of a person you're likely to become. Focus on expanding your knowledge and learning. The more you learn about, the more you're exposed to, and therefore, the more things that you might like or have a favorable disposition towards. Remember this when adopting anything new that you really want to like. It might be difficult at first because you're not familiar with it. Practice just being around something or exposing yourself to the idea, group, club, whatever it is. The more you can get in and around the topic that you're trying to adapt, the sooner you'll like it. Sometimes this might be an effort of will to keep yourself interested in something that's new and maybe unfamiliar. Now that you know about the mere exposure effect and the familiarity principle, you can take action knowing what it will take to eventually like something. Now, obviously, not everything is going to be your cup of tea, and that's okay. The idea behind this principle is to give yourself a leg up when trying to learn something new or when you're exposed to new environments. If you understand going in that it's going to take some time before you potentially enjoy something, you can set those expectations beforehand, saying, okay, I'm going to need to give this a couple of weeks, or maybe a couple of months, or maybe even a year, depending on what the activity is. But I think it's important to always set a deadline for yourself or that expectation so that maybe if after that time you don't like it, you can take a step back and say, all right, this isn't for me, and that's okay. The mere exposure effect is a powerful tool that can help shape our preferences and behaviors. We can use it to help build various aspects of our life, from personal growth habits to positive relationships. Hopefully, you can find a way to make a difference in using the mere exposure effect or the familiarity principle in your life. Kaizen.